The station was always quiet after 11 p.m. Not empty, just quiet, in a way that made every sound feel important. The soft buzz of the lights, the distant wind moving through the tracks, the low electronic voice announcing trains that almost nobody waited for anymore. Ethan came here every night after work. Platform 4, 11:35 p.m. The last train home. For 3 years, nothing changed. He worked at a small printing shop near the river, finished late, bought the same canned coffee from the same vending machine, and stood near the same yellow safety line while waiting for the train. It was not a good life, but it was a life he understood. The station workers knew him, not by name, but in the quiet way people recognize someone they see too often. The old woman cleaning the stairs always nodded at him. The man inside the ticket booth sometimes looked up from his newspaper and gave a tired smile. And every night, at exactly 11:43 p.m., the train arrived. The doors opened. A few people got off. A few people got on. Then the train disappeared into the dark. Simple, predictable, safe. That was why Ethan liked it. Outside the station, the city still moved with noise and light and unfinished conversations. But here, time slowed down. The station felt separated from the rest of the world, like a place floating quietly between yesterday and tomorrow. That Thursday night began the same way. Rain fell lightly onto the tracks, not enough to soak the ground, just enough to leave reflections on the platform floor. Ethan stood beside the vending machine, warming his hands around a hot can of coffee. 11:41 p.m. 2 minutes left. Across the tracks, a girl wearing a long gray coat sat alone on a bench. He had never seen her before. She looked young, maybe 22, 23. Her dark hair moved slightly in the cold wind. She was not using her phone. She was not reading. She was simply watching the tracks, waiting. For some reason, Ethan noticed that, more than anything else, people never looked at the tracks anymore. They looked at screens, at clocks, at advertisements, but not at the tracks themselves. The girl did, almost as if she was listening for something. 11:42 p.m. The electronic voice echoed through the station. The final train arriving on Platform 4 will arrive shortly. Ethan took a sip of coffee. The familiar vibration beneath the ground arrived a few seconds later. The train was coming, right on time. Headlights appeared in the darkness beyond the tunnel. White light cut through the rain. Closer, closer. Then something strange happened. The train did not slow down. At first, Ethan thought he imagined it, but the sound grew louder, faster. The lights rushed toward the platform too quickly. The train passed through the station without stopping. A violent rush of wind swept across the platform. Ethan stepped backward in shock. The silver car screamed past under the station lights. Window after window flashed by in a blur. But for 1 second, just one, he saw the passengers inside. Every seat was occupied, and every passenger was staring out the window, not talking, not moving, just watching the platform in complete silence, watching him. Then the train disappeared into the darkness beyond the station. Gone. The station became quiet again. Too quiet. Ethan stared at the empty tracks. His coffee can slipped slightly in his hand. Behind him, someone laughed nervously. Another passenger muttered, "What the hell was that?" The electronic announcement system remained silent. No apology and no explanation. Nothing. Ethan slowly looked across the tracks. The girl in the gray coat was still sitting on the bench, still calm, still watching the tunnel, as if nothing unusual had happened at all. Then, for the first time, she looked directly at Ethan and quietly asked, "That train usually stops here, doesn't it?" Ethan did not answer immediately. The question itself felt strange, not because of the words, but because of the way she asked it. Calm, almost careful, as if the answer mattered more than it should. Rain tapped softly against the metal roof above them. Somewhere farther down the platform, a man complained loudly to a station employee. Another passenger checked his phone again and again, searching for updates that did not exist. But the girl in the gray coat remained completely still, waiting for Ethan's answer. Finally, he nodded. "Every night," he said quietly. 11:43. The girl looked back, toward the dark tunnel. Her expression did not change, but Ethan noticed something strange. She did not seem surprised, only disappointed. A cold wind moved through the station. The overhead lights flickered once, then stabilized again. Ethan glanced at the electronic schedule board. No delays, no cancellation notice, no record of the train passing through at all. Platform 4, 11:43 p.m. on time. As if nothing unusual had happened. The station employee near the stairs looked confused, too. He spoke quickly into a radio, then shook his head in frustration. Passengers slowly began leaving the platform. Some called taxis, others checked bus routes. The station started returning to normal, but Ethan stayed, and so did the girl. He wasn't sure why. Maybe because leaving felt wrong. Maybe because he wanted someone else to admit they had seen the same thing. The girl finally stood up from the bench. She was taller than he expected. The gray coat hung loosely around her shoulders, moving slightly in the wind. Without looking at him, she asked, "Do you come here every night?" "Pretty much." "For how long?" 3 years. That seemed to interest her. She looked at the tracks again. "Then you would notice things other people don't." Ethan frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" The girl hesitated. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Then she quietly said, "Sometimes trains carry people who aren't ready to leave yet." A distant announcement interrupted the silence before Ethan could respond. A replacement train would arrive in 20 minutes. Passengers near the stairs sighed in relief. Normal life was trying to repair itself, but the atmosphere on the platform had already changed. Ethan suddenly became aware of how cold the station felt. Not physically cold, empty cold, the kind that settles into a place after something leaves. The girl started walking toward the exit stairs. Ethan watched her go. He should have let her leave. He knew that. Instead, he called out, "Wait." She stopped. "What did you mean?" he asked. "About the people on the train?" For a moment, she said nothing. Then she turned slightly toward him. The station lights reflected softly in her dark eyes. "You saw them too," she said. It was not a question. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Because yes, he had seen them. Only for a second, but clearly enough to remember. Every passenger sitting silently, every face turned toward the platform, watching, not one person speaking, not one person moving. And somehow, every single one of them looked sad. The girl lowered her eyes briefly. "Most people forget by morning," she said softly. "That's probably better." Then she walked up the stairs and disappeared from sight. Ethan stood alone on the platform again. The replacement train arrived 23 minutes later. Different driver, different lights, different sound, Everything normal. The doors opened. Passengers entered quietly. Ethan stepped inside. The train smelled faintly of rain and wet fabric. Almost every seat was empty. He sat beside the window and watched the station slowly disappear behind him. For several minutes, he could not stop thinking about the girl's words. Most people forget. By morning, the train moved through sleeping parts of the city. Dark apartment windows, silent intersections, convenience stores glowing alone in the night. Ethan leaned his head against the cold glass. Exhaustion slowly settled into his body. Then, as the train entered a tunnel, something reflected faintly in the window beside him. Someone sitting directly behind him. Ethan turned immediately. The seat was empty. He looked back at the dark window. Only his own reflection stared back now. Tired eyes, gray jacket, rainwater still on his sleeves. Nothing else. He exhaled quietly and closed his eyes for a moment. The train continued forward into the darkness, but somewhere deep in his mind, one thought refused to disappear. The passengers on the train that never stopped. Where were they going? Ethan slept badly that night. Not because he was frightened. At least, that was what he told himself. The truth was harder to explain. Something about the train felt unfinished, like hearing a sentence without its ending. He woke up several times before morning. Each time, he checked the clock beside his bed. 3:12 a.m., 4:03 a.m., 4:47 a.m. And every time he closed his eyes again, he saw the same image. Rows of silent passengers looking out through dark train windows, watching the platform, watching him. By Friday afternoon, the memory already felt less real. The printing shop was busy that day. Machines rattled endlessly. Customers complained about deadlines. His manager asked him to stay late again. Normal things, loud things, the kind of things that push strange thoughts away. Around 8 p.m., Ethan finally convinced himself the whole event had been some kind of accident. An express train, maybe. A scheduling error. People often looked strange through moving windows at night. There was always an explanation. There had to be. Still, when his shift ended near 11 p.m., he noticed himself walking slightly faster than usual. Toward the station. Toward platform 4. The rain had stopped, but the city streets still reflected light from signs and passing cars. The station entrance glowed softly in the darkness, warm, familiar, safe. Ethan bought his usual canned coffee from the vending machine. The machine made its usual clicking sound. He almost smiled with relief. Routine mattered tonight. Platform 4 looked normal. A tired office worker slept against a pillar. 2 students argued quietly over headphones. A woman carrying grocery bags checked the time every few seconds. No gray coat. No strange atmosphere. No silence pressing against the walls. Ethan checked the clock. 11:39 p.m. 4 minutes left. He told himself he was disappointed because he wanted answers. But deep down, another feeling bothered him more. He had expected the girl to be there. The realization unsettled him. At 11:41 p.m., the electronic announcement played, exactly the same as yesterday. The final train arriving on platform 4 will arrive shortly. A cold feeling moved slowly through Ethan's chest. He looked down the tunnel. Darkness. Then, far away, headlights appeared. The train was coming. This time, it slowed normally. Metal wheels screeched softly against the tracks. The familiar rhythm returned. Passengers relaxed around him. Everything was normal again. Ethan almost laughed at himself. The train stopped. The doors opened. People stepped out. Others stepped in. Completely ordinary. But just before Ethan entered the nearest door, he noticed something strange. One of the passengers inside was staring directly at him. An older man sitting alone near the back of the car. Gray suit, thin face, motionless. The man did not blink. Ethan hesitated. Someone behind him muttered impatiently, "You getting on or not?" Ethan stepped inside quickly. The doors closed. The train began moving again. He tried not to look at the old man. Instead, he sat near the opposite side of the car and stared at the route map above the windows. 3 stops to home. Simple. Normal. But after several minutes, curiosity pulled his eyes back across the train. The old man was still watching him. Not aggressively, not angrily, just watching. Ethan looked around carefully. Nobody else seemed to notice. A teenage boy played games on his phone. A woman in a business suit slept quietly beside the door. 2 students whispered to each other near the far end of the car. Life continued normally around him. Only the old man felt separate from it. Then the train lights flickered, once, twice. For half a second, the inside of the car darkened completely. And in that instant, the old man was no longer sitting alone. Every seat around him was occupied. Silent passengers filled the entire section of the train, all facing forward, perfectly still. The lights returned immediately. The seats were empty again. Only the old man remained. Ethan's heart pounded violently now. The old man slowly stood up. The train announced the next station. Riverside Station. Not Ethan's stop. Still, the old man walked toward the opening doors. Before leaving the train, he finally spoke. Quietly, almost gently. "You saw it because it noticed you." Then he stepped onto the platform. The doors closed between them. And for the first time in 3 years of taking the same train home every night, Ethan felt afraid to look out the window. Ethan kept his eyes on the floor until the train left Riverside Station. He listened to the familiar sounds instead. The low hum beneath the seats, the soft shaking of the windows, the distant announcement for the next stop. Normal sounds, human sounds. He needed that because the old man's words continued repeating inside his head. "You saw it because it noticed you." What did that even mean? Ethan rubbed his tired eyes and forced himself to breathe slowly. Maybe the lights had played tricks on him. Maybe exhaustion was affecting his mind. He had been sleeping badly, working too much, thinking too much. There were reasonable explanations for all of this. There had to be. When the train finally reached his station, Ethan left quickly without looking back. Cold night air hit his face as he climbed the stairs toward street level. The city felt unusually quiet, not silent, just distant, as if the world had moved slightly farther away overnight. His apartment building stood 6 blocks from the station. An old concrete building squeezed between a closed pharmacy and a small laundromat. Nothing special. The hallway lights on the 3rd floor still flickered the same way they always had. Mrs. Keller from apartment 304 still kept plants outside her door. Someone on the 2nd floor was still playing music too loudly. Everything should have felt comforting. Instead, Ethan found himself listening carefully to every sound around him. He unlocked his apartment door. Inside, the room smelled faintly of coffee and old books. The small lamp beside the sofa cast warm yellow light across the walls. Safe again. He closed the door and stood there for a moment without moving. Then he laughed quietly at himself. A tired, embarrassed laugh. "You're losing your mind," he muttered. He heated leftover noodles in the microwave and turned on the television for background noise. A late-night comedy show filled the apartment with forced laughter. It helped. A little. By 1:17 a.m., Ethan finally felt calm enough to sleep. Rain had started again outside, soft against the windows. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, while headlights from passing cars moved slowly across the room. Eventually, exhaustion pulled him under. Then came the dream. He was standing alone on platform 4. No rain, no passengers, no announcements, only silence. The station lights above him flickered weakly. At the far end of the tracks, a train waited in complete darkness. No headlights, no sound, just a long shape resting beyond the platform. Its doors were open. Ethan could not see inside, but he knew someone was waiting for him there. A voice echoed softly through the empty station. Not loud, not threatening, simply patient. "You're late." Ethan tried to move backward, but his feet would not move. The platform beneath him felt soft, unstable, like wet ground. Then, slowly, figures began appearing inside the train windows. Passengers, silent, watching him. One by one, more faces emerged from the darkness. An elderly woman, a young boy, a man in a black coat, a girl with long dark hair, and finally, the old man from Riverside Station, still staring directly at him, still expressionless. The train doors began closing, slowly, as if giving him one last chance to enter. Panic exploded through Ethan's chest. He forced his legs to move. The station lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Close, very close. Ethan turned and woke up immediately. His room was dark, except for the digital clock beside the bed. 3:14 a.m. His breathing was uneven. Sweat covered the back of his neck. For several seconds he could still feel the dream around him. The station, the train, the watching faces. Then another sound reached him. Soft, distant, metal against metal. Ethan froze. The sound came again. A low screeching noise, like train wheels turning slowly on old tracks. But that was impossible. There were no train tracks near his apartment. He sat up carefully in bed. The sound continued, somewhere outside, slow, heavy, dragging through the night. Ethan stood and walked toward the window. Rain covered the glass in silver lines. The empty street below reflected pale orange streetlights. Nothing unusual. No train, no people. Only wet pavement and darkness. Then he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Across the street, under the broken bus stop light, someone was standing alone in the rain. A woman in a long gray coat, looking directly at his window. Ethan stepped back from the window immediately. His heartbeat became painfully loud in the silence of the apartment. For several seconds, he simply stood there staring at the floor, trying to think, trying to force the world back into something reasonable. Maybe it was not her. Maybe it was just someone wearing a similar coat, a stranger waiting for a taxi, someone standing under the rain for completely ordinary reasons. Yes, that had to be it. But deep down, he already knew he was lying to himself. Slowly, Ethan looked toward the window again. The woman was still there, motionless beneath the broken bus stop light. Rain moved through the pale glow around her, turning the air silver. From the third floor, Ethan couldn't clearly see her face, only the outline of the gray coat, and the feeling, the strange certainty, that she was looking directly at him. Then, without warning, the streetlights outside flickered. Once, twice. Darkness swallowed the street for less than a second. When the lights returned, the woman was gone. Ethan crossed the room quickly and pressed closer to the window. Empty sidewalk, empty road. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. A cold feeling settled into his stomach. He closed the curtains immediately. That night, he did not sleep again. By morning, exhaustion made everything feel unreal. The dream, the woman, the sounds outside. All of it blurred together inside his head, like a memory that did not fully belong to him. At work, he made mistakes constantly. He printed the wrong order twice, spilled coffee on a stack of paper, forgot simple instructions halfway through conversations. Around noon, his manager finally frowned at him. "You sick or something?" Ethan forced a smile. "Didn't sleep much. Then go home early tonight." Ethan almost laughed. Home did not feel like a place he wanted to return to anymore. By evening, rain covered the city again. Heavy this time, the kind of rain that erased distant buildings behind gray water and reflected every light across the streets. Ethan stood outside the station entrance for nearly 5 minutes without going inside. He told himself he should leave, go somewhere else, take a bus, call a taxi, anything except platform 4. But eventually, almost without thinking, he walked down the familiar stairs. The station air smelled faintly of wet concrete and electricity. Everything looked normal again. People moved normally. Announcements played normally. Life continued normally. That somehow made things worse, because Ethan no longer trusted normal. He bought coffee from the vending machine. His hands trembled slightly while opening the can. 11:38 p.m. The girl in the gray coat was already there, standing near the far end of the platform, waiting. This time, Ethan walked directly toward her. She looked tired tonight. Not physically tired, emotionally tired, like someone carrying a memory too heavy to put down. When she noticed him approaching, she didn't seem surprised. "You saw them again," she said quietly. Ethan stopped a few feet away. "Who are you?" The girl ignored the question. Instead, she looked toward the tracks. "Did you dream about the train?" A cold pressure moved through Ethan's chest. "How do you know that?" She remained silent for a moment. Then she asked softly, "Did it stop for you this time?" Ethan stared at her. Rain whispered against the station roof above them. Far away, thunder rolled through the city. Finally, he answered, "No." For the first time since meeting her, the girl looked relieved. A strange sadness passed across her face, small, almost invisible, but real. Then she said something that made Ethan wish he had never come back to the station. "That means you still have time." Ethan felt the words settle heavily into the air between them. You still have time. Time for what? He wanted to ask immediately. But something about the girl's expression stopped him. She looked exhausted, not from lack of sleep, from remembering, as though she had explained this too many times before. The station lights hummed softly above them. Passengers stood scattered across the platform, unaware of the strange conversation happening only a few feet away. A businessman adjusted his tie while reading messages on his phone. Two teenagers laughed quietly near the ticket machine. Life continued normally around them. Yet Ethan suddenly felt separated from it all, like invisible glass stood between him and everyone else. He lowered his voice. "Tell me what's happening." The girl looked down the tracks. Dark tunnel, no headlights yet, still a few minutes before 11:43. I don't know everything, she said softly. Nobody does. Then tell me what you do know. She hesitated. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the station roof in slow, steady lines. Finally, she spoke. Some people begin seeing the train before they disappear. Ethan's stomach tightened. Disappear? The girl nodded once. Not suddenly, not dramatically. Usually people just drift away. Her voice remained calm but distant, like someone reading from an old memory. First, they notice the train. Then they start dreaming about it. Then they begin seeing passengers. Ethan remembered the old man, the silent faces, the reflection in the train window. And after that, he asked quietly. The girl looked at him for several seconds before answering. Eventually, the train stops for them. A low vibration suddenly moved beneath the platform floor. The next train was approaching. Ethan barely noticed. What happens if you get on? The girl's eyes lowered slightly. For the first time since meeting her, she seemed afraid, not of Ethan, of the answer itself. Nobody comes back. The sound of the arriving train echoed through the tunnel. Headlights cut across the darkness. Passengers near the platform edge stepped forward automatically. The normal rhythm of the station resumed, but Ethan felt frozen in place. The train slowed properly this time. Metal screamed softly against metal. The doors opened. People entered. People left. Ordinary. Yet Ethan couldn't stop looking through the windows, searching the reflections, searching the empty seats, searching for silent faces, watching from the dark. The girl remained beside him. She didn't board the train either. After the doors closed and the train disappeared, Ethan finally asked the question that had been growing inside him since the night before. How do you know all this? The platform became quiet again. The girl wrapped her coat slightly tighter around herself. Then she answered, Because my brother saw the train first. Ethan said nothing. The rain seemed louder now. 3 years ago, she continued, he started taking the late train home after work. At first, he only mentioned strange passengers. Then the dreams started. Her voice never broke. That somehow made the story sadder. He became quieter after that, she said. Like part of him was listening to something nobody else could hear. Ethan felt cold again. Not the cold of weather, the cold of recognition, because he understood exactly what she meant. The girl looked toward the dark tunnel once more. One night, he called me from this station. For the first time, emotion entered her voice. Very small, but impossible to miss. He sounded terrified. Ethan waited silently. He told me the train had finally stopped. The station lights flickered overhead once, then steadied again. The girl continued speaking quietly. He said the doors were open, and everyone inside was staring at him. Ethan's hands tightened around the warm coffee can. What happened? The girl looked at him, directly, honestly. He stepped inside. Silence settled between them, heavy, endless. Somewhere above ground, thunder rolled across the city again. Ethan swallowed slowly. And then? The girl's eyes moved back toward the empty tracks. Her answer came almost as a whisper. I never saw him again. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The station no longer felt like part of the city. It felt isolated, cut loose from ordinary life. Rainwater shimmered across the platform floor, beneath the pale fluorescent lights. Passengers came and went. Announcements echoed overhead. Yet everything seemed far away now. Distant, muted. Ethan stared at the dark tunnel beyond the tracks, trying to imagine stepping onto a train and simply vanishing from the world. No explanation, no goodbye, nothing left behind except silence. Did anyone look for him? He finally asked. The girl nodded. Of course. Her voice carried no bitterness, only exhaustion. Police reports, missing person posters, phone records. They found nothing. Ethan looked at her carefully. And nobody believed the train story. A faint smile appeared on her face, sad and brief. Would you? Ethan did not answer. Because 3 days ago, he would have laughed at something like this. Now he wasn't sure what to believe anymore. The electronic clock, above platform 4, changed to 12:02 a.m. late. The station had grown quieter. Most passengers were gone now. Only a few scattered figures remained beneath the dim lights. The girl suddenly asked, Do you know what the strange part is? Ethan frowned slightly. There's a stranger part? She nodded toward the tracks. After my brother disappeared, I started coming here every night. Ethan listened carefully. At first, I thought maybe he was still alive. Maybe he would come back. Maybe I had missed something. Her eyes reflected the station lights softly. Then, 6 months later, I saw the train. A low chill moved slowly down Ethan's spine. Did it stop? The girl shook her head. No. It passed through the station exactly like you described. Ethan remembered the violent rush of wind, the silent faces, the impossible stillness inside the moving cars. And your brother? He asked quietly. For several seconds the girl remained silent. Then she answered. He was sitting near the window. Ethan felt his chest tighten. You're sure? Yes. Her voice did not shake. That somehow made the story feel even more real. He looked exactly the same. Same coat, same face. But she stopped. Ethan waited. But it didn't feel like he was alive anymore. The overhead lights buzzed softly above them. The platform suddenly felt colder than before. Ethan glanced around. He noticed something strange then. The few remaining passengers on platform 4 all stood unusually still. Not frozen, just quiet, watching the tracks, almost unconsciously, as if they were listening for something far away. Ethan looked back toward the tunnel. Darkness, endless darkness stretching beneath the city. Then a thought entered his mind, one he immediately wished he had not spoken aloud. What if they aren't dead? The girl turned toward him slowly. Ethan continued carefully. What if the train takes them somewhere else? The girl's expression changed slightly. Not agreement, not disagreement, recognition, like she had once hoped the same thing. I used to think that too, she admitted softly. And now? The girl looked down at her hands. Rain tapped steadily against the roof above them. Then she said, Now, I think the train takes people who stop belonging anywhere else. Ethan stared at her. The sentence lingered heavily in the air. Stopped belonging anywhere else. He suddenly thought about his apartment, his routine, his silent dinners, the years that had blurred together without changing. And for the first time, a dangerous thought appeared quietly inside him. What if the train had noticed him for a reason? A loud metallic sound suddenly echoed from deep inside the tunnel. Both of them looked up immediately. Not a normal train sound. Slower, heavier. The station lights flickered once, then again. Passengers near the stairs glanced around nervously. The electronic schedule board went black for 2 full seconds. When it returned, every line of text had disappeared. Only one message remained glowing across the screen. Arriving soon. No platform number, no train name, just those two words. The girl's face lost all color, and very quietly, almost under her breath, she whispered, "It's early tonight." The station became silent. Not ordinary silence, not the quiet pause between announcements or passing conversations. This silence felt wrong, heavy, as if the entire station were holding its breath. Even the rain outside seemed distant now. Ethan stared at the glowing words on the schedule board. Arriving soon. The message flickered faintly against the darkness. No departure times, no station names, nothing else remained. Around the platform, passengers slowly began noticing something was wrong. A businessman frowned at the board. A woman near the stairs checked her phone repeatedly. Someone laughed nervously, but nobody left. That was the strange part. Everyone simply stayed where they were, waiting. The girl stepped closer to Ethan. For the first time since meeting her, genuine fear appeared openly on her face. "You need to leave," she whispered. Ethan looked at her. "What about you?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched the dark tunnel beyond the tracks, listening. Then Ethan heard it too. A low metallic sound, far away. Slow wheels turning somewhere beneath the city. Not fast like a normal train. Deliberate, measured, coming closer. The overhead lights dimmed slightly. Passengers across the platform became unnaturally still again. A teenage boy slowly lowered his phone. An elderly man stopped walking halfway to the stairs. Even the station employee inside the ticket booth stared silently toward the tunnel. Ethan suddenly understood something horrifying. It was not just him anymore. They could all feel it. The girl grabbed Ethan's sleeve suddenly. Her hand felt ice cold. "Don't look at them," she said quickly. "Who?" But Ethan already knew. The passengers. If the train arrived again, the passengers would be there, watching. The metallic sound grew louder. Closer now. Deep within the tunnel, darkness shifted. Then Ethan saw something impossible. Light, but not white train headlights. This light was pale blue, soft, almost underwater in color. It slowly spread across the tunnel walls as the sound approached. Nobody on the platform moved. Nobody spoke. The entire station seemed trapped inside a frozen moment. Then the electronic announcement system activated suddenly. Static burst through the speakers. A broken voice struggled beneath heavy interference. "The train now, arriving." The sentence cut off violently. More static. Then silence again. The pale blue light reached the edge of the tunnel. Ethan's heartbeat pounded painfully inside his chest. The girl's grip tightened around his sleeve. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "don't step closer." The train emerged slowly from the darkness. Everything about it felt wrong. The shape looked older than the normal city trains. The silver surface was darker, worn, almost colorless beneath the station lights. No destination name appeared above the windows. And the windows themselves. Ethan immediately wished he had not looked at them. Every car was full. Passengers sat perfectly still inside. Men, women, children, all silent, all facing the platform, watching. The train slowed gently as it entered the station. Metal screamed softly against the tracks. The sound echoed unnaturally through the empty air. Then the train stopped. For the first time, directly in front of Ethan. The doors remained closed. Nobody moved inside. Dozens of pale faces stared outward beneath the dim interior lights. Ethan could not breathe properly. Some passengers looked ordinary. Others looked distant, faded somehow, like old photographs left too long in sunlight. Then Ethan noticed something worse. Several passengers were people he recognized from the station. The old man from Riverside Station, a woman he had seen buying newspapers every morning, a teenage boy who sometimes slept on the late train, all seated silently together, as though they had always belonged there. The girl beside Ethan trembled slightly. Her eyes searched the windows desperately, looking for someone. Then she froze completely. Ethan followed her gaze. Near the center car, a young man sat beside the window wearing a dark winter coat, motionless, watching the platform. The girl's brother. Even from several meters away, Ethan understood immediately, because the sadness on her face was unbearable. The young man slowly raised one hand toward the glass, not waving, not calling for help, just touching the window softly from the inside. The girl took one unconscious step forward. The train doors opened. The sound of the opening doors echoed through the station like a long breath. Soft, mechanical, final. Warm air drifted out from inside the train. Not cold, not threatening. That somehow made it worse, because the train did not feel violent. It felt welcoming. The passengers inside remained perfectly silent. None of them moved. None of them blinked. Only watched. The girl stared at her brother through the open doorway. For a moment, she looked very young, not mysterious, not calm, just someone who had been waiting too long. Ethan spoke quickly. "Don't." She did not respond. Her eyes never left the train. "He's still there," she whispered. The sentence carried years of hope inside it. Hope Ethan could suddenly understand. The brother inside the train slowly stood up. The movement was unnaturally smooth, almost dreamlike. He stepped closer to the open doorway, but didn't leave the train. The pale blue light inside the car touched his face softly. He looked exactly like a normal person. No wounds, no ghostly appearance, just tired, deeply tired. The girl took another step forward. Ethan grabbed her arm instinctively. She turned toward him sharply. For the first time, anger flashed across her face. "Let go. You said nobody comes back." "I know what I said." Her voice broke slightly. "Oh, only once." But Ethan heard it. The brother inside the train lifted his eyes slowly toward Ethan. And suddenly Ethan understood something terrifying. The passengers were not trapped. At least, not physically. The train was waiting for permission, waiting for people to enter willingly. The station lights flickered violently overhead. Somewhere behind them, a passenger screamed. Ethan turned briefly. A middle-aged man near the stairs was walking slowly toward the train now. His face empty, his movements calm, like someone sleepwalking. Another passenger followed him, then another. The silent people from the platform had begun moving, not running, not panicking, simply walking toward the open doors. The girl noticed too. Fear returned instantly to her face. "No," she whispered. The brother inside the train finally spoke. His voice sounded distant, like hearing someone through deep water. "It's easier here." The words drifted softly across the platform. Several passengers moving toward the train seemed to relax after hearing them. One woman even smiled faintly. Ethan felt cold terror crawl through his chest, because for one dangerous second, the sentence sounded comforting. No stress, no loneliness, no exhaustion, no endless routine, just silence, rest. The train seemed to understand exactly what people wanted most. The girl's brother extended one hand toward her. not forcing, inviting. The pale blue light around the doorway pulsed softly. Ethan suddenly remembered her words. I think the train takes people who stop belonging anywhere else. And now, he finally understood. The train did not hunt people. It waited for people who were already drifting away from life on their own. People exhausted by loneliness, by grief, by emptiness. People who quietly wanted to disappear. The girl's hand trembled beside him. Ethan tightened his grip on her sleeve. If you get on, he said carefully, he still won't come back. Tears finally appeared in her eyes. The first emotion she had truly shown since the night they met. Because deep down, she already knew. The brothers standing inside the train looked familiar. But something essential was missing from him. Like a memory copied too many times, still human, but distant, far away. More passengers continued walking toward the doors now, silent, expressionless. A station employee stepped inside the train without hesitation. The businessman Ethan had seen earlier followed after him calmly. None of them looked afraid. That frightened Ethan more than anything else. The train wanted surrender, not fear. The girl suddenly took a shaky breath. Then, very slowly, she stepped backward, away from the doorway. Her brother did not react. His hand remained extended for several more seconds, then lowered again. The pale blue light inside the train dimmed slightly. The passengers already inside turned their eyes toward the girl together. Every face, at the exact same moment, watching her choose to leave. Ethan felt his stomach twist violently. Because now, they were looking at him too. The station lights buzzed weakly overhead. Every passenger inside the train was staring at Ethan now. Dozens of faces, silent, waiting. The pale blue light spilling from the open doors reflected across the wet platform floor like cold water. Ethan could feel the attention pressing against him. Not anger, not hatred. Something worse. Understanding. As though the passengers already knew every lonely thought he had ever hidden from the world. The exhausting routine, the empty apartment, the nights that blurred together, the quiet feeling that his life had somehow paused years ago without him noticing. The train understood all of it, and for one dangerous moment, Ethan understood why people stepped inside willingly. No more struggling, no more drifting through endless identical days. Only silence, only rest. The thought entered his mind softly, almost kindly. You could leave everything behind. The blue light near the doorway pulsed again. Warm, gentle, inviting. Ethan took a small, unconscious step forward. The girl grabbed his wrist immediately. Don't listen to it. Her voice sounded far away, like something fighting through heavy fog. The passengers continued staring. Some looked sad, some looked peaceful, and some looked relieved. Ethan suddenly noticed something terrifying. Many of them were still wearing ordinary clothes from the lives they left behind. Office uniforms, school jackets, winter coats wet from old rainstorms. They had entered the train during completely normal nights, just like this one. The brother inside the train looked toward the girl again. Then he quietly said, "You were lonely too." The words hit her harder than Ethan expected. She lowered her eyes immediately. Pain crossed her face, real pain, not fear of the train, fear that the sentence was true. The brother's expression softened slightly. You don't have to be anymore. The train lights flickered gently behind him. Passengers near the windows remained perfectly still, watching, listening, waiting. Ethan realized the train never forced anyone. It simply offered escape. And maybe that was why it was so dangerous. The metallic voice from the broken announcement system suddenly crackled overhead again. Static burst across the station. Then, through the interference, a fragmented sentence emerged. Final departure. The sound distorted violently before cutting out. The train doors began closing. Slowly, the girl inhaled sharply. Her brother stepped backward into the pale blue light, not resisting, not asking again, just returning quietly to his seat beside the window. The doors continued sliding shut between them. Ethan looked around the station. The passengers who had entered moments earlier now sat silently inside the train too, already still, already distant, as though the station had forgotten them, as though the world itself had already begun erasing them. The girl suddenly moved, not toward the train, but toward the edge of the platform, toward her brother's window. The doors sealed shut completely. The train remained motionless for one final moment. The girl placed her hand softly against the cold glass. Her brother looked at her from the other side. Neither smiled, neither spoke. There were no dramatic final words, no promises, no miracle. Only two people separated by something neither of them could cross anymore. Then, very slowly, her brother lifted his hand and pressed it against the glass opposite hers. For the first time since the train arrived, emotion appeared clearly on his face. Not happiness, not sadness, acceptance. The pale blue lights inside the train dimmed further. The station lights flickered violently again, and the train began moving. Slowly at first, metal groaned beneath the wheels. The girl kept her hand against the glass, as long as possible, while the train rolled forward. Her brother disappeared window by window, into the darkness. The silent passengers passed by one after another, watching, always watching, until finally the last car vanished into the tunnel. Gone, the station became quiet again. Normal quiet, not the heavy silence from before, just an ordinary station after midnight. The electronic schedule board restarted suddenly. Train times reappeared. Announcements resumed. Somewhere nearby a phone rang. Life returned all at once, as if nothing had happened. The girl slowly lowered her hand from the empty air. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then Ethan noticed something strange. The deep, cold feeling inside his chest, the feeling that had followed him for days, was gone. Not completely, but lighter somehow. The girl looked down the dark tunnel one last time. Then she said quietly, "It won't come back for a while now." Ethan stared at the empty tracks. "How do you know?" The girl gave a faint, tired smile. The kind people wear after finally putting down something heavy. Then she answered, "Because tonight, we chose to stay." The station slowly emptied after that. Passengers returned to their ordinary lives without understanding how close they had come to leaving them behind. A businessman hurried toward the exit while checking emails. Two students laughed nervously about the weird power outage. The station employee reopened the ticket booth and complained about electrical problems into his radio. Normal explanations were already rebuilding the night. That was how people survived strange things. They folded them into ordinary memories until they no longer hurt. Ethan and the girl remained on platform 4 a little longer. The rain outside had finally stopped. Water still dripped softly from the station roof. The tracks reflected pale silver light, stretching endlessly into the tunnel. For the first time in days, Ethan no longer felt afraid of looking at them. The girl sat quietly on the bench again, the same bench where Ethan had first seen her. Only now, she looked different somehow, lighter, not happy, but no longer trapped inside waiting. After several minutes, Ethan finally spoke. "What happens now?" The girl thought about the question carefully. Then she shrugged slightly. "Tomorrow comes, I guess." A small laugh escaped Ethan before he could stop it. Not because the answer was funny, because it sounded surprisingly difficult. Tomorrow. Going back to work. Going home. Continuing ordinary life after standing beside something impossible. The girl looked toward him. "That's harder than people think." Ethan nodded slowly. He understood now. The train was not really about death, or ghosts, or disappearing. It was about surrender, about the quiet temptation to stop trying. And maybe everyone encountered that train eventually. Not always on tracks, not always at midnight, but somewhere in life, people reached moments where giving up felt strangely peaceful. That was why the passengers looked so calm. The realization stayed with Ethan as they sat together in silence. A cleaning machine hummed faintly somewhere farther down the station. The first early morning train announcement echoed through the speakers. 4:58 a.m. Morning was approaching. The girl stood up slowly and adjusted her gray coat. "I should go." Ethan looked at her. Until that moment, he realized he had never asked her name. Maybe part of him had been afraid to. Afraid that knowing names would make everything feel too real. "Wait," he said quietly. "What's your name?" The girl paused. Then, for the first time since they met, she smiled gently. A real smile this time. Small. Tired. Human. "Mina." Ethan repeated the name silently to himself. Mina nodded once toward him. Then she walked toward the exit stairs. Halfway there, she stopped briefly without turning around. "You should take a different train home sometimes," she said softly. Then she disappeared upstairs. Ethan remained alone on platform 4. The station no longer felt suspended between worlds. It was just a station again. Cold lights, old concrete, tired people waiting for trains. Ordinary. And somehow that felt comforting now. Several minutes later, a morning train arrived normally. Bright lights, half-empty seats, sleepy passengers carrying coffee cups. The doors opened with a familiar mechanical sound. Ethan looked inside. No silent faces, no pale blue light, no one watching him through the windows. Just people, living people. He stepped inside. The doors closed behind him. As the train pulled away from the station, Ethan looked out the window one last time. Platform 4 slowly disappeared into the distance. For a brief second, he thought about all the nights he had spent drifting through life, without noticing. Working, sleeping, repeating the same empty routines, waiting for something to change on its own. But nothing changes on its own. People choose. Even staying is a choice. The train entered the first tunnel beneath the waking city. Darkness briefly filled the windows. Then morning light appeared on the other side. Soft, gray, real. And for the first time in years, Ethan was no longer in a hurry to get home.